It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. We both were kind of caught in the music there. Like it started, it stopped, and we were still kind of just both nodding our heads when it panned to us. But Alan, how we doing?
It happens almost every day. But yeah, I don't know. It's so
if the
good.
people are watching on YouTube, they get it. If you're just listening, you have no clue what I'm talking about.
I mean, they know what they're talking about because they're probably doing it too. Everyone
That's
does.
true. Oh, actually, I want to lead off the show giving a shout out because I got a DM on Instagram, which, by the way, I told people literally just yesterday to DM me instead of Alan because I'll be better at getting back to them in a timely manner, which I had to go into my Instagram settings and change something because that wasn't even the case. Somebody DM me on Twitter was like, hey, you told us to DM you and we can't even DM you on one of these platforms. So, but I got a DM from Michael Metcalf, and he says, hey, Zach, big fan of the podcast from South Florida. Actually discovered the show through Alan's guest appearances on Locked On Steelers. Not surprising there. His no-nonsense, down-to-earth take paired with the dynamic of you simply being a diehard Steelers fan creates a very unique listening experience unlike anything else that I've listened to so far. Literally why the podcast was created. Appreciate you picking up on that. Genuinely look forward to the show every day, even in the off-season. The only complaint that I have is they're not longer. I drive a lot, so I prefer hour-plus podcasts. But who am I to say? Not looking for a shout out or anything. Just wanted to jump on, and this is my favorite part: the afternoon drive glazing that has been going on this week. Yeah, and then Jonathan Shorter also sent me his Spotify Wrapped that I got today as well, where we are the number one, not number two. We're number one on his. We were getting a lot of twos behind Carter, but we're number one on Jonathan. So appreciate that. Yeah, but I mean, I want that top spot, and then he can be too. That's the way that I want to see those looking for next year. So hopefully in people's Spotify Wrapped looks that way. But anyways, appreciate the DM as well, Michael. I know that you didn't want the shout out, but there's a shout out.
There you go. There you go. What are you? This is we didn't even talk about this. What are your thoughts on some longer shows? What do you think about that?
Well, definitely wouldn't be. I mean, we're kind of already past, I guess, the afternoon drive now when we're not posting the show. We're getting into the evening drives at this point. When I first got into podcasting, it was super long. I mean, there was like times where they were 2+ hours because me, Herb, and Tyler would talk about all three teams on the same show once a week, and we would do it all at the same time. So then we condensed it. We were like, okay, we're going to do each one individually and put them out that way, but they were still like 45-ish minutes, sometimes up to an hour. So this is the shortest one that I do. What I was getting at, I know it was long-winded, that was where I was comfortable. Like that was what I was used to before doing this, was longer ones.
I know when we started, I think we were concerned how much we could fill every day. Especially in the off season. I think I would not hate like the occasional bonus episode. I think we could probably work that in. Instead of like being
and also when DB's on here, it's like 45 minutes at the very least. So
Fridays are definitely longer for sure.
Mm-hmm. So those are the episodes that Michael's really a fan of, is on Fridays when he gets more than 30 minutes.
I think everyone is a fan of the episodes where DB's on. Let's be real.
Well, if the YouTube comments tell us anything about how the audio listeners also feel, I'm guessing that's the case.
People love them some DB.
They do. They also love them some Tomlin Tuesdays, which was today, as we will now start talking about football 4 minutes into this thing. So anyways, Alan, as we always do on Tuesdays, kind of just go through some notes, some of the highlights, some of the talking points that come out of Tomlin Tuesday. First and foremost, the first thing that I want to bring up, because everybody wants to talk about, no George Pickens against the Eagles, basically. I mean, if he's ruled as doubtful this early in the week, you're not going to see George Pickens out there against the Eagles. I would say that's pretty safe to say. Would you agree, first and foremost, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, Jaylen Warren was ruled doubtful and then played earlier this year. So, it's not impossible, but, it's doubtful. That's
okay. They put the precedent. Yeah. Okay. But I will say, there's no way for me to necessarily positively spin this. But what I will say is, at least it's early in the week. We're not talking about 45 minutes or an hour before game time trying to put together a game plan to attack this defense. Early in the week, more than likely, you're not going to have George Pickens at your disposal on Sunday. So hopefully Art's able to put together a game plan that does not involve George Pickens' involvement within the offense. Now, it's obviously that's a massive hit for the offense, but if you're looking for any positive takeaway here, is that it gives them enough time to hopefully put together a game plan without him.
The other positive takeaway is that this game doesn't really matter that much. Like they can lose this game and it doesn't hurt them all that much because it's an NFC team. They've already built up a nice lead in the division. Win or lose this week, they clinch the division with a win next week. So, it's not the end of the world. I also think, even with George, this was going to be a real struggle for the passing game. Eagles have the number one passing defense in the league, or number two. I can't remember. I think number two passing defense in the league. I'm kind of like, I'll say this. If you look at it from Arthur Smith's perspective, if you have George Pickens in this game, you're just going to do your normal thing, and you're just going to try to rack your brain to figure out how you can beat the Eagles with your guys where nobody else has beaten the Eagles with their guys. Art's a pretty creative guy. Sometimes I think to his detriment, but I think this is licensed to just get weird, right? You're playing one of the best defenses in the league. You don't have your best playmaker. Let's see Justin Fields, a wide receiver. Let's see the Wildcat. Let's line up with 2 tackle eligibles and just play power eye. I don't care. I think it and some days you're what is he doing with all this crap? Just throw the ball to George Pickens. But when just leaning on your best playmakers is likely not to work anyway, that's the perfect time to go get in your bag.
And I wouldn't even consider this getting in your bag, but hey, I got an idea too. You're down one of your best offensive eligible. Let's see some pony. Let's see both those backs on the field at the same time.
I've only been mentioning it for 3 years now, almost every single at least monthly, if not weekly. But yeah, let me see some pony. But every weird thing in that playbook should come out this week. Why not? It's just there's no there's risk, but there's no downside because just lining up and throwing the ball to Van and Mike Williams and Scotty Miller is probably not going to work against this defense. So, do whatever you got to do. I don't know. I'm actually kind of I'm not happy that George is hurt or anything like that. I'm just curious to see what Arthur Smith can come up with in this situation.
I'm curious to see what we're going to come up with on Friday for our bold predictions because I'm cooking up some things in my mind now for the offense. Yeah.
You can get super bold here. Super bold.
That Connor Hayward touchdown pass to Spencer Anderson is going to hit.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, back to who do you okay, so say he sits this game.
Yeah.
What it's looking like we're going in that direction right now. What is from a wide receiver room perspective? Is it just the guys that we saw? Do you think it could mean a Brandon Johnson helmet?
No, I think just the guys.
Okay.
I think just the guys. I think we may see there's a possibility that Roman Wilson could return to practice this week. I doubt he plays this week, but I think there's a possibility. He's been running for a while now. Talked to him, I think last Thursday. No, I wasn't there last Thursday. It must have been Wednesday. And he's moving all right. So but I would assume that you're going to go into this game with those 5. And I would assume that the snaps will be distributed pretty close to the way they were last week. I wouldn't think that there'll be a big change. Van Jefferson played 48. Scotty Miller played 34. Calvin Austin, 23. Ben Skoranek, 20. Mike Williams, 19. I wouldn't expect a big difference in the way the snaps are distributed either.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, that would be the one thing that I'm curious about is if there is a leap there for Mike Williams in this one.
Maybe a little one, but I don't think a big one.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe closer to 50%. He was at 30%. I could see that, but probably not a huge one.
And this is still relating to receivers. We talked about Josh Reynolds when he got waived. KJ Osborne now waived by the New England Patriots. Any interest to you at all in bringing in a guy like that?
Yeah, I'd throw a claim in. I don't think he'll get to the Steelers on waivers, but I would throw a claim in. Yeah, he's cheap. He's experienced. He was really good in Minnesota. I think there's a lot of similarities between that scheme and this one. They don't really have another player like him I think that's always one of the things you look for. And so maybe they would try to see if he can get through and sign him to the practice squad, but I would throw a waiver claim on him. I don't think it would hurt too bad.
He fits with the Steelers have right now in terms of one thing, which is he doesn't get a lot of separation. The thing is, like you're saying, we've seen him be productive going back to his days in Minnesota. Despite that being the case, he's found other ways to win despite not getting separation.
Yeah, and I think he's he's like he's a better player than some of the guys they have on their roster. So like I don't hate the idea of grabbing him.
Yeah. All right, that's enough for the wide receiver stuff for right now. But that wasn't the only injury to talk about coming out of Sunday. So we knew about the Larry Ogunjobi one, obviously, with him leaving the game early. Groin injury, so that's going to be one to watch throughout the week. Left the light on. Donte Jackson, who I feel like just keeps getting banged up in games, but then ends up being able to go on Sundays anyways. Now he's dealing with another. What was this issue?
Back. And apparently he was sick on Sunday too, Mike Tomlin said.
Geez, so yeah, Donte Jackson just keeps grinding it out despite all these ailments that he's had. And then DeShon Elliott also dealing with a hamstring, another soft tissue injury. So that's 3 going back to last Thursday when George got hurt that they've accumulated now over the last
No, I think that's
weeks.
4.
What's the 4th?
Right. Jackson.
Is okay. I guess so. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So
I was thinking the 2 hamstrings in the groin, but I guess Jackson thrown in there as well. So okay, yeah, let's keep counting the soft tissue injuries. The counter keeps going there. This has obviously become a concern. It's been a concern all season. This is definitely not the time to be accumulating injuries like this. But what do we make of these ones? I mean, there's like DeShon Elliott. Obviously, we were just talking about him yesterday for a good portion of the show, how good he's been, maybe had his best game and how good he's been all year long. But obviously that's going to be one to monitor. These are all going to be ones to monitor.
If I was the Steelers, I would be very displeased with the job being done by the new training staff. Mm-hmm. I think the number of soft tissue injuries that have accumulated this season is frankly alarming. They went out and hired a new strength and conditioning staff this offseason, and it appears that they've gotten significantly worse in preventing soft tissue injuries. Look, you can't prevent ACLs. You can't prevent, getting your ankle rolled up. Like you can't prevent concussions. Like there's no preventative maintenance for those things. But when you got this many soft tissue injuries, I think the spotlight has to be on the training staff at that point. I don't know what is not being done correctly, but something is not being done correctly, and I think that's becoming more and more clear as the season goes on.
And I think there's been a lot of chatter about that exact thing, around the organization, is that number piling up. And we talked about it going back to the Russell Wilson injury, right? Like, maybe a staff that's a first-time NFL staff coming in from the collegiate level, trying to be like different, like, hey, we're not going to do things the exact same way. Like that's why that crew lost their jobs. So we're going to like try to be, reinvent the wheel here and do things that they weren't doing in the past. And look how that's going so far. So I have to assume that there's a lot of displeasure, like you are saying.
Yeah. I don't think that's. I don't know what's going to happen or how you can fix it in season. I'm not sure that you can. I guess you can try to change up the practice schedule or something. I don't know, but something's got to improve dramatically in that area, or they're in some trouble here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a funny one to talk about. Obviously, the meme always goes around when you talk about Breezewood. But Tomlin mentioned playing a game in Breezewood and thought we could have some fun with that one on here. For anybody that's not familiar with the area, maybe because we have a lot of people that watch or listen from out of state, I need you to do some research here on Breezewood as we kind of talk through this. But Alan, I thought you'd have some fun with that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Breezewood is halfway to everywhere, as people like to say. But I don't know that there's anywhere to play in Breezewood. Like I can't think of. I mean, I assume there's got to be a high school there somewhere. But I'm not sure that's going to work. But the actual halfway point between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia is near Shippensburg, where Shippensburg University has like a 7,700 seat stadium. So it'd be very intimate there. That's where they have the Pennsylvania track and field championships every year. So maybe that's the answer. I really think it's weird to me that the Steelers and the Eagles aren't rivals, because the Penguins and the Flyers are and the Pirates and the Phillies were before the Pirates did. But it's just a weird luck of the draw thing that the Steelers ended up in the AFC. They don't play the Eagles very often, but the one place that I feel like there's some real dislike between Steelers and Eagles fans is at Penn State, because they overlap so much. There's so many, and an Eagles Steelers game at Beaver Stadium would be a ton of fun. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, the amount, how many more fans you'd have in attendance doing that.
Get everybody's season ticket holders in the game. Almost.
Yeah.
It's really close.
Oh, that'd be sweet. And cutting the stadium in half basically to do it.
Yeah.
Just having it be half and half like that. Oh man. All right, how do we pitch this? This is it right here, I guess.
I guess I am. The official pitch. I understand the NFL is all about the international game right now, and I'd love to play in Ireland and Mexico, but that would be a lot of fun. I'm just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So these teams are meeting on Sunday.
Maybe a preseason game. It wouldn't be as good, but it would still be pretty cool.
Would you do it every year? Make it the one that you play.
You could. They don't have that anymore, but you could.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the other thing is, at some point here, Heinz Field. Wow. Acrisure Stadium is going to be undergoing some renovations. At some point, I assume Steelers lease is coming up at 2030, and they're going to want to extend it. And my assumption is that is going to come along with some renovations to the stadium. And it's possible that there would be a year where they have to miss some home games. So they could give up a home game to play it there if the timing works out, that it would be. So what would that be, 4 years from now? So 2028, when the Eagles are scheduled to come to Pittsburgh, have it at Beaver Stadium instead. I don't know. It could be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see.
I got one more thing. I was playing around with midpoints there, and of course, I think everyone's pretty familiar with the midpoint between the Steelers and the Browns being sort of Youngstown, right in the middle, right? And but would you care to hazard a guess about the midpoint of the Steelers and the Bengals and the Steelers and the Ravens?
No, because I don't want to look like an idiot.
Well, or I also did one where the midpoint of the entire AFC North.
Okay.
So the midpoint between the Steelers and the Ravens is actually basically Breezewood.
Okay.
That is pretty much the midpoint between the driving distance midpoint is Breezewood, and between the Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, it's Zanesville, Ohio, which is home to a D3 school, I think, but not much else. But if you want to pick the midpoint of the entire division, it's Wheeling. It's almost directly in downtown Wheeling. Is the midpoint of the entire division. So if you wanted to have a neutral site AFC North championship game, Wheeling Island would be the place. I could get down with that. That could be fun.
Wheeling Island. My dad used to play so many hockey games on Wheeling Island. I'm down for it. All right. Alan, not only will these teams see each other Sunday, not only are they cross-state. I don't know if I could say rivals between these two teams because they don't see each other often enough. But there's a lot of parallels between them, and especially the way that they are starting to be built through the drafts. A lot of people are saying that obviously Andy Weidl came over from Philly, and people have talked about the emphasis that they're putting on the trenches since him being brought in. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. You mentioned before we started recording, Tomlin didn't give you much in terms of trying to talk about the parallels between the two organizations, but I think that they're certainly there.
Yeah, Mike said that's more of an Andy Weidl question. I'm like, great, Mike. We'll ask Andy when he talks again in August.
Put it in the iPhone notes.
But I think it's been very clear that the Steelers have been modeling this rebuild after the Eagles and probably some other teams in the same vein. But I think the similarities to the Eagles are too great that they have to be intentional. We talk about them, I feel like, all the time, right? Like the building from the trenches out, the 2 waves of defensive linemen, mobile quarterback, like it's all there. Like I don't know that. And like, I think Howie Roseman's the best general manager in football. So if you got to pick somebody's notes to copy off of, that's the guy, right? Like, why would you do anything else?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's some, like maybe some Lions sprinkled in there as well.
Yeah,
With the way
sure.
that they're going. Yeah, but if you was saying like which team does this most look like, I would say Philly, and I don't think that is by coincidence. I think it's certainly by design that it looks that way. Because talking before, like I think we had this conversation going back to last year when it was the AFC and NFC championship weekend, and we were talking about like the teams playing in that and which team you could try to model. Like you can't, like it's harder to find the franchise quarterback. Like you look at the way you almost felt like the Steelers had to go about business differently than the Chiefs or the Bills or a team that has a Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson type, right? Like you're building a different way than if you have one of those guys.
Yeah, yeah, and they don't, and the Lions don't. I think that's where those similarities come from. So that's sort of the way you have to build them, and I think that's been very intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. Get to some. Oh wait, no, I wanted to bring up one more nugget that you posted about as well. Going back to 2016, Mike Tomlin, when he was scouting a Landon Roberts at Houston, they ended up trading a pick that could have potentially been used on Landon Roberts for Josh Scobie. Yeah, not a name that people want to hear. I know a lot of people were upset with you bringing up Neil O'Donnell on Morning Rush, but I'm sure Josh Scobie being brought up on Steelers Afternoon Drive, not going to do them any better. So I'm sorry to upset you folks, but I had to drop that name. But we always talk about like Landon Roberts has just felt like a Steeler. He's been here less than 2 seasons, and it still feels like this has just always been meant to be in black and gold. Hopefully they get an extension done. He ends up finishing out his career here. But man, could you have imagined if he was on the roster going all the way back to 2016? Like, especially with how bad and dire the linebacker situation got over the years, like especially in 17 when they lost Ryan Shazier.
Well, how about starting in 16 when Roberts played for the Patriots against the Steelers in the AFC Championship game?
Yeah.
I mean, not that game was like close enough that it was one of Landon Roberts flipping sides away. I mean, he's not that good. But like the next year they go into that playoff game with the Jaguars and Sean Spence is playing like every snap at linebacker. And like, I don't know if they would have used that draft pick on Landon Roberts or not if they had it, because they already had Vince Williams. And I think they're fairly similar guys, but like, man, he just is a Steeler. He just was meant to be a Steeler. I don't know how I can describe it any better than that. We talked a lot about him destroying Ethan Pochich yesterday. But like, man, he just every bit of him, every bit of how upset he was at the way the defense played against the Bengals, his leadership, his approach to the game. He was just, he is a Steeler. And man, like I'm sure that E-Rob is very happy with the Super Bowl rings that I should ask him like what would have happened if he came to Pittsburgh. Obviously he's won 2 Super Bowls with New England, so I'm sure he's okay with that having worked out the way it did. But man, like, do the Steelers trade up for Devin Bush if they have a Landon Roberts? Like, you can really go down a rabbit hole there. That is pretty interesting. But man, I remember was it back in training camp? I made the little meme like girl with a time machine and boy with a time machine, and go back and have the Steelers drafted Landon Roberts and DeShon Elliott was what I was doing. And man, to know that they were that close to doing it, and it was because they traded for a stupid kicker that they couldn't. That stings a little bit.
It does. It does. So probably not at least the detour that he took in between in Miami. That didn't need to happen.
Yeah. Should have signed it. Yeah, should have signed in Pittsburgh then for sure.
Yeah. There was a question that we wanted to get to yesterday. We apologize, Christopher Sexton, but wanted to get to this yesterday. Didn't, but here it is now. So certainly still going to get to it. Wanted to know about Chris Boswell obviously has been successful all season, despite what field he is kicking on. Acrisure Stadium, any of the away stadiums, he's been pretty much automatic all year. You haven't seen that with other kickers. I mean, you look directly in the AFC North, the struggles that Justin Tucker has had. We just saw it again this past Sunday with Hopkins. Even Evan McPherson before he's hurt right now. They get Cade York up there. But even in general, like Evan McPherson has had his struggles this year as well. But specifically when you look at Acrisure Stadium, was definitely a tougher place to kick before. Do you still feel like, and I don't know if the numbers would back this up, that still has that kind of reputation as being one of the tougher places to kick? And why does Chris Boswell kind of completely break that mold?
I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as it was before. I mean, since they closed in the bottom half of the south end zone, like those flags at the top of the goalposts are almost never moving now. It's not like it used to be, and if they are, it's a fairly consistent direction. It's not that sort of swirling, unpredictable wind going into that open end. The other thing is, I think they've finally gotten to a place with the grass where they have a really good system in place. They replace the turf about twice a year. They do it after the Whitfield Championship games. They do it another time, somewhere, when there's a convenient spot like late September, early October. So like the turf is generally in pretty good shape now. I don't think it's a hard place to kick anymore. You look at what Ben Sauls did for Pitt this year. He's one of the best kickers in college football. You want to talk about a snub, by the way? That guy wasn't even a finalist for the Lou Groza Award, which I vote for. It's pitiful. He's a really good kicker. He had an awesome year. I think he kicked a 58-yarder this year at Acrisure. So, like, I don't think it's a hard place to kick anymore. I mean, specifically, like Pittsburgh's weather isn't great. Anytime you're kicking in the rain and the wind and the sleet and the snow, like it certainly is impactful. But like, is Pittsburgh harder to kick in than Cleveland? No. Or Green Bay or Philly. Like, nah, I think they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah. So because it wasn't just the weather before, like the weather elements, like it was the way that the stadium was. Now, there's obviously the weather, like it's still like it's not a dome, right?
Right.
There's obviously it's a tougher place to kick than those, but it's like you're saying, when you look at like regionally, like those other teams that are in the same region, it's no different than them at this point. But to that point, like Chris Boswell's still been so good that just speaks more to Chris Boswell and where these other kickers are at. Because again, Justin Tucker's been great his entire career, but this year has not been. Hopkins had a really good year in 2023, got rewarded with a 3-year, 15 point something $million extension, and in the first year of it is not having a very good year. And then I mentioned Evan McPherson, who's now hurt with what he was doing as well. But yeah, what a weapon Chris Boswell has been, and honestly, the entire special teams unit. We talk about it a lot, but just awesome.
Yeah, like there's a lot of those stadiums that are grass fields, northern climates, Kansas City, Baltimore, Washington, Chicago. Those, even San Francisco, like people don't think of California as being cold, but it's not warm there very often. There's lots of places that I think are now pretty much the same as kicking in Pittsburgh. Denver, that's not one.
I hate to
Denver
do
has
this.
the altitude, so I guess Denver's easier, but
yeah, well, okay. Speaking of Denver, I hate to do this, but I'm gonna not ask the question that I was gonna ask at the end here because we don't have enough time to, I think, do the topic justice. So we'll leave it for tomorrow. So yeah, Johnny Be Good is the person that sent me this, which by the way, I appreciate the name. It's JOHNNYBEEGUD, but I'm assuming it's still Johnny Be Good, right? Like that's how you would. Yeah. I'll give you a little bit of a tease for what it is. We're going to talk about, he said, do you think that if Russ would have had Arthur Smith prior to coming to Pittsburgh, so whether it was in Denver before he got here or even late Russ in Seattle, there would be this narrative built around him that he's already washed? And I think it's a good topic, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, but I don't want to get into that now with how much time we've already taken.
Speaking of Russ not being washed, your tweet this morning was
that's why this person sent me.
I saw it going around, stolen by multiple other platforms, and I'm like, that's a banger right there.
That's how it goes. That's how you know that you've made it, when you see other platforms taking it. But no, I appreciate it, Johnny. We will get to that tomorrow. Alan, is there anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think that's it. We got it all.
You were a bit conflicted there, so I wasn't sure. All right. Well, if that's the case, you know the drill. Tell the people where to find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now, the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go over there, read the words so I can get paid. And like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive, Steelers Morning Rush, Sights and Sounds, post-game, Steelers Spotlight with Aaron Becker, all the good stuff. Check it out.
There you go. And if you're not on YouTube and you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe over there. I'm going to grab some of those reviews to read on here. If you guys ask a question in there or just leave us some kind words, we would greatly appreciate that. And then you can find us on TikTok as well, Steelers Afternoon Drive. And then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.